My wife said it was.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Watchers. This is a really exciting episode that we have here tonight, doing Wrestling Watchers tonight. And we have a Pennsylvania-based independent wrestling icon joining us for the show. And we'll kick it over to him in about a minute after the intro.
Welcome to the Watchers Podcast Network, the only source for film, TV, horror, music, pro wrestling, stand-up comedy, and the paranormal, all in one channel. If you're a fan of our shows, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.
What is the best? You got the best, the hardest part in the world.
It's a thing.
You called that intro cringe last night, and I see
did.
it's probably the 2004 pixel art there at the end with our names on it that hit that. But so joining us tonight, we have Kato, and real briefly for anybody listening that is not familiar, a few years ago, I was actually training, and that was at PWX in McKeesport, Pennsylvania. That's when and where I first met Kato, and he was a veteran who was working at the time and also helping with the training, and immediately commanded respect. And it was in my short time there, thrilling to learn from you, Kato. And it was actually your advice that I took, that I shouldn't be in a wheelchair at 40 years old and to have my neck fixed and throw ball to my children instead of trying to finish my injury off in the ring. So I think my entire family are actually pretty grateful for you because I took that advice. But
so that few years ago you're talking about is going to be 10 years, so you're pretty quick.
Oh yeah, I guess it was like 9 years ago.
And I just want Kato to know, one time I was at a show and you ripped up a sign of mine, and I'm still salty about that. Like when I was like 14.
What? Any guess what the sign said?
Dude, I don't. Man, that was 20 years ago.
Okay, where would this have been? Do you know that?
Like Johnstown, Altoona-ish area, around there.
All right, well, from the bottom of my heart, I'm very sorry.
No, don't apologize. Don't break kayfabe here.
No. Me 20 years ago, and me now are much different people. I was angry all the time 20 years ago. I'm not so angry anymore.
No, see, I'm still angry.
Well, you haven't reached that ripe old age of 49 yet. Wait a few years. You'll be less angry by then. You just be trying to hold on and not die at that point.
It's a lot closer than I really want to pretend that it isn't.
Right, that's scary.
Yeah. But yeah, so how are you doing tonight, Kato?
Good, really good. I just got back home from the Imagine Dojo. We had a nice little training class there. Had a couple matches, watched some videos, trying to improve on some young guys getting better in the ring. And yeah, I mean, teaching wrestling is my favorite thing in the world. If I could, outside of, my kids and my grandkids, teaching wrestling is the best thing that I'm involved in. And, I wish I could do it for a living, because I really do like being around a wrestling ring. And I like helping guys sort things out and get better at the art that is pro wrestling.
Yeah, I could back that up. That when you were missing from a PWX training session when I was there, it felt off. And I don't know if that, if that was for everyone or just kind of me, because I immediately kind of picked up on your teaching methods. But if we had a night when it was just maybe Crusher or Brandon K, I was always like, oh man, why isn't Kato here tonight? And I was driving almost as far as you were at the time. I remember we kind of talked and bonded about that because I'm from out closer to Altoona, and you were kind of shocked I was driving all the way to McKeesport every week for that. But I was thinking I was a real studious learner, and I took a notebook, and we were being kind of taught some things. We were all sitting around the ring, and I was like, man, you know what? This is really cool. I'm going to write all this stuff down, and I'm going to take it home and study it. And no sooner than I have that notebook open and a pen in my hand, and you're like yelling at me to put it down and pay attention and to absorb it differently. And from that moment on, I was like, okay, he's the one that I'm going to have to impress here. And right up until, my neck started to really give me problems, you started to pull me aside when you were doing demonstrations, and you'd like throw me into something that even if I haven't done it yet, you'd ask, and the answer would have been no. And you're like, well, you're doing it now. And then you just start, rolling around and, using me as an example. So I don't know if I ever reached the level of respect with you or anything, but in my head, I created it. I was like, okay, maybe Kato doesn't hate me.
I think that's a popular misconception. Everybody thinks I hate them, and I really don't. I really like almost everybody. Um, I'm just, I'm sort of from an old school environment of, let's get our work done. Let's work hard and, talk to men like they're men and not baby them along the way. And I still do that now with the guys that I train here in Altoona. I think that wrestling is not ballet, and you don't have to be just physically tough. You have to be mentally tough to be in the ring. And sometimes where it seems like guys are being, rough and gruff with you vocally, it's 99% of the time not, for me anyway, it's not necessarily something that I'm doing because I'm just a jerk. It's because, in the real world, sometimes you got to be mentally tough. And if you can absorb getting chewed out a little bit, then along the way, it's these trials and tribulations that you come into in life become a little easier if you can find that mental toughness that it takes to be a good pro wrestler. So yeah, I respect anybody that's willing to put in hard work. You don't have to be perfect at being a wrestler to get my respect. You just have to be somebody that tries your damnedest.
Yeah, and that in retrospect, that definitely showed. And you were always there, talking to everybody and willing to help, even though I don't think you were brought on as a trainer specifically at all. You were just working and coming in for the training session. So it was nice to have when you were there. And
No disrespect to Crusher or Brandon K, because they were fantastic. They're fantastic what they do as well. A nice guy. I really particularly miss Crusher Hansen. I know everybody sort of thought he was gruff and tough, but man, he was a big teddy bear and a good man, and I miss seeing him around.
Yeah, I enjoyed everybody there. And there was one night it was just Crusher, and that was maybe my second to last training session before my neck really ended it. And we were learning drop kicks, and I threw probably the worst drop kick in the history of professional wrestling. And he kind of looked at me and he's like, "That's okay, man. You don't have to do every move in the book." And he's like, "Just don't do drop kicks." And I was like, "Nah, man, I want to learn. I want to get better at this." So I drop kicked until my neck gave out.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys were awesome. Although when we were training, yeah, I was always a little nervous when we were like bumping and your daughters were there, because I was like, oh man, I don't want to mess something up and then Kato will kill me because I stiffed his daughter and gave her a black eye or something.
No. I mean, I think the female should train the same as the guys. It's a rough and tough physical sport. You got to be physically tough, emotionally tough to get through it, whether you're a man, woman, or anything else anybody wants to determine that they are. You've got to be tough to be in the pro wrestling business.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I start to kind of absorb the beginning of your career and how you got into all this, I have a burning question because you are kind of that grizzled vet, I'm curious what your opinions are, because you like to train, about a lot of like the social media stuff that we see with wrestling now. It seems like it's just my algorithm, but anytime I'm scrolling through Reels or TikTok, I end up seeing somebody training and doing stuff and on a crash pad and kind of showing the training method and how they're accomplishing the move and their repetitions and stuff. And I I was only there a little bit, so I don't really think my opinion should hold a lot of weight. But for me, I think that's almost pulling the curtain back a little too much and exposing maybe a little too much of the business.
I don't know. I certainly, there was a time in my life I felt the same way. I don't know that I feel that much anymore. I think anybody with any type of athleticism can sort of on their own just watch wrestling and sort of figure out how to do the moves. If they have a good athletic partner that they can do this stuff, anybody can sort of figure out how to relatively do the moves. But if you really are ingrained in wrestling and understand what wrestling is and the art that it is, the moves are literally 1/110% of what good wrestling really is. And that, peeling back that curtain, is very difficult to find. I'm not saying there aren't glimpses of it online, but to actually understand how to properly book a territory, properly book a match, how to present a match in a way that is compelling and interesting and makes not just pop a crowd, so to speak, a match that makes people say, I got to come back and see this guy again. I got to come back and see this girl again. I've got to pay my money to see this guy get his ass kicked, or I've got to pay to see this person kick that guy's ass. Like, the art of wrestling is what I constantly refer to it as. That is something that's not an easy thing to peel back. So just to show you how to do a drop kick online doesn't bother me. I mean, it's like I said,
You
I
show us right
remember
now?
how to do a drop kick from my pickup truck.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'm sitting in my pickup, so probably not. But if people do it online, it doesn't really, it's fine. I remember being, I don't know, 12 years old. My brother was 6 or 7, I guess, and we would have full blown matches in our living room. That I mean, they weren't like
Right.
what you saw on TV, but we were able to figure out a lot of stuff on our own as little kids. So to say that 19-year-old kids aren't backyard wrestling, I mean, that's silly to say that they're not. And I don't even think there's a big problem with being a backyard wrestler. My problem becomes when you have the guys who aren't putting in the proper work and not getting the grasp and the understanding of how to do this from a storytelling perspective correctly. And then the next step is you're buying a ring and you're charging people admittance to and calling yourself a professional wrestler and charging $20 for people to come and see something that's not professional wrestling. You should just name it what it is, sort of backyard cosplaying wrestling. And if you called it that, maybe I wouldn't have such a problem with it. But if you're trying to compare what top level indie guys are able to do and charging that kind of money, because what happens is then people don't understand that they're not gonna see Imagine Wrestling, who all of my guys have spent multiple weekends with Dr. Tom Pritchard and with Shane Douglas and with Brian Myers and who else? We've had Al Snow through the school, Ricky Morton twice, top level trainers in the world. And I'm not too shabby myself at teaching guys how to wrestle because I've been around it now for 25 years. Like, you're comparing, people aren't going to say, well, that's Imagine Wrestling and that's ABC Wrestling, and those guys aren't really trained. They're just, if their first time at an indie show is going to see ABC half backyard wrestling, they're just going to say, oh man, indie wrestling is awful. I'm not going to any of it. And then it's negatively affects, you know, really good independent wrestling. Like, I would put us in there. I think IWC in Pittsburgh is, although I don't agree with all their philosophies, is certainly a top level independent company. I think Rise Wrestling down in Uniontown is also a top level independent company. I think whenever you have other companies sort of floating around, and I just picked out three at random. There's a million great indie feds out there, so they're just the three that popped into my mind. And then you have these other companies that aren't the same. It does a disservice to independent wrestling, and I'm sure every genre has that, whether it's rock music or I don't know what else is out there. An independent circus compared to a sort of a low level circus you might come to town as opposed to a good circus. I'm sure every sort of entertainment value has this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I never
it's funny.
that.
Drew and I met through backyard wrestling.
Yeah,
that's how we met.
I don't ever really brag or bring that up when I'm talking to an actual professional. I remember I used to talk to
that's how
Sterling James Keenan about it all the time, and he would shit on me all the time for it.
Do you remember AIM, Kato, the AOL messaging platform? Like way back in the day?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Like I think I talked to you on there maybe once or twice. I talked to Steve Carino. I talked to like all these guys, but I met Drew through the backyard wrestling stuff. And then that's how we became friends, almost 20 years later.
13 years old when I started my backyard company, and we went up until we were out of high school. We never charged anybody. We never bought a ring.
No.
We were just
I think that's dumb stuff. That's a clear difference of a bunch of kids getting together and having fun in the backyard, and probably even called it a backyard wrestling federation.
We did.
I think that's a clear difference because, Christ almighty, me and my brother must have had 1,000 matches in our backyard, just him and I wrestling, and we weren't charging people admission. I mean, it was the most people that ever came to our backyard wrestling show was, we lived on a farm, so maybe a few chickens and a couple dogs that sort of corralled around our little area that we had. But I think that's fine. I think that's part of young guys growing up. But I think at a certain point, whenever you buy a wrestling ring and you call yourself a pro and you've not put in the work, that's where my problem sort of comes in. I think, Matt, Sterling James would say the same thing. And I think a lot of guys that take this stuff serious, some of us too serious, including me, that's where the problem tends to become a problem.
Yeah, and another thing is like they sorry, my son came down, he wants to lay on the couch. Okay, lay on the couch.
Yeah, lay on the couch, man. It's a good time to lay out on the couch.
I never liked seeing a ring in backyard wrestling anyway. And, I was at an AEW show, and I think some of the people that you might be kind of referring to were there, and they were talking about trying to get bookings, and that they were like very loudly and publicly trying to make it known that, oh yeah, hey, we're wrestlers too. And eventually your name came up, and they started to like, I don't know, bad mouth and talk down. And it caught my ear, and I didn't get involved or have any arguments or anything, but I just kind of watched these people in their dialogue, and it was like abundantly clear that these are people that didn't know what they were talking about. And I was like,
I'm widely hated amongst backyard wrestlers. I mean, they despise me based on the fact that, I voice my opinion about what they do. I've always sort of, voiced my opinion. I think if they genuinely had a love for wrestling, then go get trained. You don't have to get trained by me. I realize that I have a very abrasive personality, and I can be hard to be around. But, Glenn Spector in Pittsburgh has an amazing program. That guy is amazing. down at Rise Wrestling in Uniontown. Amazing program. Brandon Kay's down there. I mean, he has an amazing program. Turns out great professionals. Glenn turns out great professionals. And so you don't have to come to me to get trained. My advice is, I know there's other schools in Central PA. Just because you have a school doesn't mean you have a trainer that knows what they're doing. And just teaching guys how to take bumps is not what wrestling is. And I know some guys that hurts their feelings when you say that, but just being able to do moves is not what professional wrestling is.
True.
Yeah, absolutely. That was, again, I was very lucky to have the tutorship that I had, even though I wasn't able to really ever put it to real use. Brendan K was great. I enjoyed my time there. But so you run Imagine Wrestling, and you were talking about, like there's a lot more to wrestling than a couple of bumps that you see on the internet, and talking about booking it. So I'm curious how you went from, your earliest days in the indies to kind of being one of the, I don't know, I guess top promoters in Pennsylvania, as a member of the independent scene.
Yeah, so I started training in '99 in Indiana, Pennsylvania with a guy named Chris Lash's promotion, APWF, and then he brought in a few guys to help train us. A guy named TC Reynolds, who man, what a rough and tough grumble, grizzled old man, but man, he really knew his shit, and he was, helped really form me in a lot of ways and the way I train guys. And then later on, they started bringing in a guy named Julio Sanchez, who ultimately became Julio De Niro, who had a nice little run in ECW and TNA in the late '90s and early 2000s. Um, I really attribute a lot of what I've learned as far as in-ring psychology and storytelling to Julio, because he was very good at explaining that stuff. So that's how it started. 2001, after I was with the company for 2 years, I got fired from the company for, at the time, I felt like was ridiculous reasons, and I don't want to get into the details of it, but um, in retrospect, so me and my partner at the time, a guy named Dr. Feelgood, were getting booked every weekend, multiple times a weekend, and and we were main eventing a lot, every indie company around. And so the two of us sort of got big heads and were, acting a fool, not in the ring, but outside of the ring, maybe, carrying on a little bit too much and, running around with other wrestlers' wives and shit we shouldn't have been doing. But anyway, so we got fired from there, and I was just like, well, F that, I'll go start my own company. And that's exactly what I did. I opened my own school in October of 2001, which now, like, to say that out loud, after 2 years in the business, I opened my own wrestling school. If one of my guys were to come to me, who's even been with me 5 years, I'd be like, what are you talking about? You don't know what the hell you're doing. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I worked so much harder than anybody else around. Like, I've been blessed with this crazy motor that allows me to focus in and work harder than a human being should be on specific things. And especially when it comes to wrestling, like, I've just been obsessed with it my whole life. So based on an obsession, not because of any great skill, I was able to put together shows in 2002. And then, we went from there. And so I ran shows in Altoona from 2002 all the way up to 2009 under the banner KCW, Keystone Championship Wrestling. We drew some gigantic crowds in Altoona, and to look back on them, it was just insanity. I mean, I didn't know enough. I knew enough to be dangerous, and only because of hard work and having a great group around me were we able to draw the size, 600 people a show in Altoona. It was crazy.
Yeah, I went to quite a few of those, and those were like some of my first introduction to like indie wrestling, and I was young. I'm like, 2003, 2004, I was 14, 13. So that was like some of my early introduction, but it almost feels like it was like a different time, right? Like just the
Yeah,
atmosphere and the the
yeah, it was
viability
very
and things. It
violent.
was
It was much
totally
different than the wrestling that we present now. It was very violent. A lot of chair shots in the head. A lot of guys going through tables. Some barbed wire mixed in. Some flaming tables. I mean, it was it was a crazy time. We'd bring in guys like New Jack and it's Sandman. So we were sort of living off the fumes of what ECW was and presenting that type of a product at the time.
But I'll even go as far as say I think you were presenting a better product than ECW, because ECW transpired into, if there's not blood, then there's not eyes watching, right?
Yeah.
At least in a lot of these indie promotions like KCW, there was Far North Wrestling, FNW, some other ones, ICW, and that. Like they had the hardcore matches and stuff, but they still brought fans in to watch actual wrestling and not just people dying in a ring, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a great time though. It's arguably the best time of my life, and probably not necessarily because of the wrestling, because I actually think the wrestling we're putting on now is much better than the wrestling then. But maybe because I was younger and I was still a maniac that just was out of control, and so I have great memories of that era of my life.
Just speaking from a fan standpoint, that is probably my favorite era of wrestling as well, because, well, obviously, I mean, we're not really talking WWE or anything like that, because at that point it had essentially become the monopoly that it was, and it was doing its own thing. But in that kind of post Monday Night War era indie scene, it was really thriving, because you had guys that were
popping off everywhere,
that were on the books that otherwise would have been working for ECW or WCW, and the birth of Ring of Honor and everything. That was a really special time for me. And I remember going to shows like the Big Butler Fair, and every year IWC would have the Big Butler Fair. But I get to look back at this era where I know the first time I saw CM Punk was at the Big Butler Fair, and guys like what Sexual Harassment, which was Glenn and Eric, and
Justin Idol.
Oh yeah.
Wrestled both of them a ton, man. I love those guys.
Yeah, like I went to a Raw one time, and we saw Eric Ecstasy walking, and we didn't want to bother him, but we wanted to make sure he knew that he was recognized. So we're like yelling at him from a block away, and he just like throws up a wave. And Glenn Spector, when he was doing Wonder Boy, when we met him, and a friend that I was with thought he was Alex Shelley and kept calling him Alex Shelley. And it's like all these like real strange memories are super special and important to me. And just experiencing them, in that early 2000s, and then going home and Friday nights you'd watch IWC, and after IWC they'd have I can't remember, it was the Puerto Rican, I can't remember what promotion it was, but they had like Abyss and Shane and Ricky Banderas. So there were awesome blocks of indie wrestling that were on public access TV still all the time, and that would be my weekend. And so that era is super important to me, super special, and I still bother Shirley Doe about it all the time. Like, he's going to be on here soon, and he and I have like a lot of these other interests in common. We like to talk about horror movies and stuff, and we go to drive-ins, and so it's another thing where it's like, man, I was 13, 14 years old, and he took a picture with us one day and said, "Do not put this on the internet." And here we are 20 years later, and
it's still not on the internet.
I never did put it on the internet, but
I to put it on now.
Yeah, this guy talks to me like all the time, and now we have like 3 different shows scheduled on my podcast, and it's just wild.
That was one of the things with like the indie wrestlers. Like, they would open up and they would talk to their fans, and like a lot of times I felt like I was bothering people, especially like we were at the advent of like the instant messaging and stuff. like sometimes they would even reach out to you, like if you talked to them before, if you talked to them like shows and stuff. Dude, that was like, as a 14-year-old, that was like the coolest connection, was like talking to you guys. It really was. Like that made like my entire, day, when we would be just shooting the shit. Didn't have to be anything. The weather, the rain, who cared?
Right.
Like, I wanted to be a pro wrestler back then. I mean, I'd still do it now if I could, but that was the best thing, is, and that connection doesn't really exist too much anymore. It was just like that one pinpoint in time that we all had, that we could just, communicate in that way, and it's gone.
I think there's still a connection. I think that a lot of our people that follow us, follow us on all the social media and comment on our stuff, and we may not always reply to it, but we always see it. And we so I still think there's some sort of connection there, that it may be just different now than it was then, but there's still a connection that can be made, especially on the indie show. If you go to a live one, when these guys go out for intermission, they're instructed to talk to everybody that'll talk to them, especially kids.
Yeah, and I think the indie scene is real strong. It's as strong as it was in the early 2000s. Finally,
I think it's made a big comeback for sure.
It's really popping off, and it's wonderful to see that. I'm scrolling through so any kind of social media, and it's always well presented shows. Graphics are always good now. It's not like the GeoCity website or anything like back in the day. Like these.
I had one of those. Yeah.
Tripod.com. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You're old if you've had a GeoCities website.
It's one of my favorite pastimes, is looking up old GeoCities sites, just because.
Are they still around?
They are.
No, you're like,
yes,
you have to like way back machine a lot of them too. Like,
okay.
That's how I learned how to build websites, was with GeoCities.
Right. Yeah. The old wrestling sites, and another thing, and as a professional wrestler who is a solid 12 years older than me, 13 years older than me, I would hope that you would shit all over me for this, but I will go ahead and admit that in the early 2000s, I did an online wrestling game that was called eFedding, where you like basically Dungeons and Dragons your way through a professional wrestling fed, and that's the type of stuff that doesn't exist.
Because I don't. I remember seeing the ads in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated and that for it, but I think by that point I was already wrestling. So, but if I had been young, it's probably something I would have done too. Because like I've been obsessed with wrestling since I was 3 years old. So, I mean, I'm 49 years old. I collect wrestling magazines. That's my pastime. I have probably, I don't know, 3,000 different wrestling magazines at my house. So I'm somewhat obsessive about it.
I've always wanted to get into that, but I do not have the liquid funds to even start. But I'll get on an eBay and look at all of the lots, and I just kind of see that the fact that I'm not going any farther than that.
Yeah, I do enjoy them, especially the older ones from the 50s and 60s. Like I really enjoy reading through them and learning about what that particular area was like for a wrestling fan. It is interesting.
Well,
so Kato, if I can,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I want to jump back real quick. If I can ask you, I know there's probably not one specific match that qualifies this, but if you had like a match that you can picture that made you want to be the pro wrestler, what was that match?
It's hard to say. I don't ever remember, because I just wanted to do it since I was little. Like I was obsessed with it since before I can remember. So I don't know if there's one match. I do remember the first sort of feud that I fell in love with, where I was like so enthralled with it. It's way before you guys' time, but it would be Buzz Sawyer and Wildfire Tommy Rich from Georgia Championship Wrestling. We would go to my grandma's house every Saturday night at 6:05 and watch, Georgia Championship Wrestling on the Superstation. And I do remember like that feud was just, man, it was so presented so well on TV to a little tiny version of me, and I loved it. I loved Tommy Rich. I thought he was the coolest thing ever. I met him some years later. They say don't meet your heroes, and that's true. But at the time, little kid me loved Tommy Rich.
Did you ever happen to work around or kind of bump into Bruno Sammartino at all? I know that he always kind of stayed relatively close in the
He did.
in the territory.
He popped into an independent show around Pittsburgh. I'm gonna say it was for Powerhouse U's, and it was at one of the high schools. I don't remember if it was Monessen or where it was, but he came in with Dominic DiNucci, and I did run into him there. And just you don't bother a guy like that, but I did introduce myself and shake his hand, and he was the perfect gentleman that you would expect him to be. Just, oh, it's very nice to meet you, and it wasn't like he introduced himself. He said, "My name is Bruno," and I said, "Yeah." I didn't say it, but I was like, "No shit, you're Bruno. I'm nobody." But thank you for shaking my hand. That's very much a gentleman.
Yeah,
I have a story about my grandmother with Bruno Sammartino.
Oh,
It's not what you're thinking.
dude.
It's no.
I know your grandma. It's exactly what I'm thinking.
No. Oh, she's dead. Rest in peace. Anyways,
Oh.
So my grandmother was not really a pro wrestling fan, but I was, and I grew up, and she would watch like some of the Saturday night stuff that came on TV with me. But she knew two wrestlers, Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan was like big in the media, and then she knew one more, Bruno Sammartino.
Sure.
And she worked for the postal office, and where she was delivering to Bruno Sammartino's address in Pittsburgh. So that's how she actually met him. And she's like, "Well, I think I know you. Like, I've seen you on TV or something." And she did. It was Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah, that was the reason the reason I asked that was because I also met him, and it was one of the most pleasant experiences of my entire life. Like you said, an absolute gentleman, the most polite person in the world, the most cordial handshake. And then he talked to me like it was his pleasure. And like you said, in a world where they do say don't meet your heroes, that made such a lasting impression on me that 25 years later, like I still can recall every single detail about it. So it's kind of, it adds.
I was on a show with Tommy Rich. That's why I said that before. Actually, it was Far North Wrestling. You mentioned them earlier. They brought him into Butler, and man, he came in all hunched over, and I don't really want to be here. And it was just like, geez, buddy, I'm sorry you're so disappointed. I was excited for weeks knowing that I was going to be on a show with Tommy Rich, and then he was such a jerk, man. He just was not great to be around.
Well, I can imagine that in the indies, especially during certain eras of the indies, that there were guys that were kind of going through the motions and maybe upset that they were on that scale of a show.
But the Far North Wrestling stuff was super fun though, because it brought wrestling to places that didn't always have wrestling. Katanning, Pennsylvania, it was there in the ice skating rink.
The Belmont
Butler,
complex,
Belmont. They were down at the what was the little bar down in Pittsburgh? It was like a rodeo bar. We were down there.
Saddle Ridge.
And that's how I met like a lot of these guys, like the Necro Butcher, Samoa Joe, people that I would never have met outside of like maybe ICW.
I really like Dan Polinsky. Him and his wife are very good people. I do like them a lot.
Yeah,
and Tarantula was always like the king of all the FNW.
Yeah,
shows,
Tarantula.
Right?
Okay.
Tarantula would come out. Here's something, a lot of people complain about Tarantula. Now they don't like T, but I'll tell you what, T was nothing but ever good to me, and I consider Tarantula a friend. I like T. I was always respectful to him, and he was always respectful to me. I think Tarantula is a good man in my book. I know that. I'm one of the few indie guys in the world that would say that about him, but I got nothing bad to say about Tarantula. He was good to me.
How do you feel about Lord Zoltan?
I don't mind Zoltan either. I know a lot of people see his social media stuff now and they're like, what is going on with Zoltan? But again, he's another one of those guys. I didn't have any bad experiences with Zoltan. He was fine to me, and he still messages me from time to time now, and he's always cordial. He never did me wrong. So all I can speak on is what my experiences were with him. I teamed with him once against the Blue Meanie and someone else, and it was a fun match. I do remember that. Me and Zoltan as a team. It was fun. I don't know. I like I said at the beginning of this, I like a lot more people than like me.
That's at least that's a fun misconception that people have about you too. Like you can maintain that kayfabe, I guess, a little bit too. That's so many people see if there isn't a problem, they think there's a problem. And
yeah, well, I think a lot of times, like if somebody's really bad at this and I don't feel like they're improving, I mean, I can tell them to their face that, hey, you should quit the business because you effing suck at this, and that doesn't mean I hate you or I want you to die. It just means, you should maybe be on the other side of the rail. I can still be friendly toward you, but I'm not going to lie to you and say you should still be wrestling if you suck at this. I'm really bad at lying. That's the one thing that is, I guess, got me in more trouble than anything else throughout my 25 years of this. Because if I think someone sucks, I never have a problem telling them that they suck at this and they should find something else to do. People take that as I hate them. It's not the case at all. I'm just being honest. If I suddenly became an over the road trucker and I was bad at driving trucks and somebody told me I sucked at driving truck, I shouldn't take that personal. I should either A, get better at driving trucks, or B, find something else to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say sometimes that those call them negative words, is sometimes it's the kick in the pants that you need to like tighten your shit up a little bit, right?
Yeah, negative reinforcement. I just learned that for training dogs yesterday. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a that it's a bad thing. When you hear the word negative, you just assume it's a bad thing, but it's something that could be seen as negative that would then reinforce a positive behavior. So
it is now, though. Everybody feels like they need constant approval and constant praise now. And I'm an old man. I come from a different generation. My generation got screamed at for 4 hours straight, and then you better figure it out how to do it right, or you're gonna get screamed at for 4 more hours.
Yeah, you're gonna get stiffed as soon as you get in the ring, right? You figure it out.
Yeah.
So what's it like to work on shows that you are also kind of running? Are your students like using that as a way to learn, and are they grateful of that, or do you kind of run into that kind of like that blowback that you hear about people who are wrestling on cards that they're also booking?
I don't know. Nobody really has the gumption to tell me I'm wrong because of my style of personality. Nobody really has the gumption to tell me wrong. I'm sure there are guys who are like, "What the hell is this guy doing? He's 49 years old. Why is he still wrestling on shows?" And when I was young, when I would see guys that were my age wrestling on the shows, I would think the exact same thing. Like, why is this guy still wrestling? But now that I'm here and I'm this age, first off, I've got myself in the best shape I've been in 15 or 20 years. I mean, not to brag because I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I've got myself in really good shape. So that's part of it. Secondly, like it gets so ingrained in your blood that it's difficult to walk away from. And so, I'm not trying to take over anybody else's spot. I'm never going to be the heavyweight champion, but if I can contribute to the show in a positive manner, I don't see the harm in it. But I will say, I've been that 23-year-old guy that saw the 40-some-year-old guy wrestling and said, "Give me a break, man. Get out of the way, and it's my time now." So I understand that mentality as well.
Yeah, but then again, obviously, like if every match is two 20-year-olds, squaring off, then there's a whole level of experience that you're not able to learn from that vet and that you're in the ring with. And I was gonna actually compliment you because I met you, I guess, as JC pointed out, almost a decade ago at this point, and you're in like superb physical shape from when you were at PWX doing the I Believe in Kato stuff. So
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've really worked hard. The working out isn't the problem. It's the eating right that really is uh my least favorite part of all this. I don't mind the work in the gym. It's the not being able to have a half a pie whenever I see it on a windowsill. And I want to eat half a blueberry pie because, man, I love pastries. Like I love shit like that. Like I could eat a piece of cake or a pie or something like that all the time. So staying away from that stuff has been the biggest challenge I've had in the last 6 months.
yeah, it's absolutely paid off. JC, do you have anything else?
I just have one thing, and you ripped my sign up back in 2004, Kato, and I just want you to know that I'm going to stretch you from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I'm not gonna stop, brother, until you tap out.
Okay, make a sign that says that. I'll bring it to a show.
I'll bring them to a show. I'll make them drive all the way from Ohio because my kids are all super into wrestling, and I love and appreciate the fact that you are putting on these shows right there in our backyard. It's a 35-minute drive for me max, and I look forward to raising my kids in the wrestling environment that you're curating.
If you're ever in the Cleveland area, I know ICW puts on shows out here. Hit me up, man.
Okay, I probably am not going to be. We have 4 shows with Imagine in June. I'm old enough now that I'm okay if I don't want to drive more than 2 hours. So nothing personal against Cleveland, but I'm an old man. I don't want to sit in a car any longer than I have to.
I gotcha. I feel it.
But if you have kids, man, our shows are perfect for kids. We're real conscientious about the product that we're putting out there. It's real sort of PG in its language and presentation, but at the same time, like we're really presenting top level in-ring action. Where if you're a grown man or a grown woman that loves the sport of professional wrestling, you'll also not have your intelligence insulted because these guys can. The guys that I'm turning out, they can flat out go, man. And I'm talking, I am consistently proud of the work and the effort that these guys bring to the ring.
Awesome. Yeah. Other than Imagine, do you have anything else that you'd want to promote or anything?
No, I mean, like I said, I don't know how well I presented myself as a kind man, but we have the school there in Altoona, and it's like I said, the schools in Pittsburgh and Uniontown, they have incredible sort of programs out there, but they are really expensive. My program is unbelievably cheap, yet I guarantee we have one of the lowest graduations of any school around, just because it is physically demanding in a way that is not typical of independent wrestling schools now. But I want guys that if God blessed them enough to get a call from NXT tomorrow, by the time they're graduated from my school, they are mentally and physically equipped and ready to go and do not have a big learning curve when they get there. And that's not just because of me. That's because guys like Dr. Tom showed me the way of how to get these guys prepared, because I can't do it on my own. I didn't know what I was doing. So God bless Dr. Tom Pritchard, who's the best professional wrestling trainer in the world, for teaching me how to get these guys ready. And then that's my ultimate goal, is to get them ready to go on TV when that day comes. And I do have some guys that I genuinely believe in, when they get their opportunity, are going to be on television and are going to make me very proud.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's cool to hear. Since as another thing, when I was coming up in PWX, or trying to at least, the first person who showed me how to build the ring, Lee Moriarty. And now for however many years now, I've been watching him on TNT and TBS on AEW. So It's always cool to see your local guys and your peers succeed, and it's
Absolutely,
something that
100%.
I absolutely cherish. Um,
Western PA
it
has been
might,
a hotbed, man. There's been lots of guys come out of here. Sterling James, Corey Graves came from Pittsburgh, and Shane Taylor's from Cleveland, but he spent a lot of time here in Western PA. Lee Moriarty, Elias, these guys that came out of this Western PA area that have been successful, and I'm really happy and proud to have been part of their journey along the way.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I want to thank you for your time. We won't take up any more of your evening. This was very special and cathartic to me. I had hoped that I could leave this conversation without the idea of, well, I guess I'm heading to Altoona to join your school with a still healing broken neck, but I didn't quite make it there. So you might be giving me some more advice on a broken neck again in the future. But
Where do
again,
you live
thank
at
you.
now?
I live in Hastings, PA.
Oh my God, we're so close. You got to come. You got to come visit the show sometime. You'll have a great time. I do guarantee it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. My kids are all super into it. They are just about their ages now. After their birthdays this summer are going to be 5, 7, and 10, and they all have.
Do you guys have shows lined up in June?
Yeah, we have 4 shows coming up in June. We're in June 1st. We are in Reynoldsville, which is up by Du Bois, and then the 15th we're in Altoona. The 16th we're actually in Du Bois for Du Bois Days, and then the 22nd we're at the Sykesville Fair with Fandango.
Yeah, I saw that. That's one that I was actually trying to make it to.
I might see you the 22nd then.
Yeah, I think it's one of those deals there where it's part of, you get into the fair, you pay an admittance to the fair, and then you get to do all the rides and walk the midway and see the wrestling show. I know last year they did all that and it was only $10. So
wow.
It is it's a very reasonable thing, and we're indoors, so even if it rains at the fair, the wrestling still goes on.
Yeah, that's awesome too. Because that was the thing with Butler Fair, like it was right there in the outside. But okay, yeah. Thank you for your time. I'll go ahead and hit the outro. You don't have to feel any need to stay any longer, but I do appreciate it, and we will be checking the Imagine shows out. I can't wait for it.
All right, guys, enjoy your evening. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.
Before I end, I just want to say, how great was that fucking show? I want everybody listening right now to understand how special this is to me, and how if you're new to wrestling because of us, I want you to reach out to me and let's talk, let's chat, let's appreciate the magic of this business from top to bottom. It's been something that I've loved and cared about for the entirety of my life. I was part of the business that I loved. It was taken from me. And this was a guy that we just talked to who readily admitted that he rubs people the wrong way and it's not even on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants nothing more than to help grow the business. And everything that I walked away from my training with came most importantly from his tutelage. So if anybody listening has any inclination about wanting to get into the business, wanting to train, finding a school, Kato's the guy to do it. And I appreciate that you guys listen to this. We're going to keep pushing out content like this. We're super passionate about it. This was one of the best shows that I think we ever did. I'm literally only talking right now because I'm coming down from a high from even the experience. I have an adrenaline rush right now, and that's what this business can do, even in a conversation with somebody. So thank you all, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching. do it dirty, do it long, do it hard. I don't know how to end these other shows. I will catch you later.
Peace.